There's a number of headlines this week we'd like to tackle with your Miami Dolphins, so we're going to get into a collection of topics here today, the Locked On Dolphins podcast.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers because it is your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I know I always thank you guys for making Locked On Dolphins your first Miami Dolphins listen of the day. And I appreciate your patience today. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024. And our household had some ailments come home from preschool, and those ailments are now all my ailments. So I spent all day in bed. But it was good. It kind of gave me a chance to digest what Mike McDaniel said in between the long naps that I was taking to get my energy up and get ready to get rolling. And we got the Shaq Barrett contract news. We got an Odell Beckham offer confirmed, and we're going to dive into a collection of topics as a result. Before this week, we are going to start some of our prospect deep dives for the 2024 NFL Draft and what prospects may be good fits for the Dolphins, which players I would be in on for Miami, and which ones I would maybe gratuitously pass on for being a good fit for the Dolphins. So let's start with Mike McDaniel and what he disclosed at the owners' meeting, starting first and foremost with a topic that I know there were a lot of people that had some issue with throughout the course of last season, namely the short yardage situations, the fades down near the goal line. Some people thought, is this Dolphins offense better off with Mike McDaniel not calling the plays? And I have been to this stage pretty adamantly against the idea that Frank Smith calling plays is a better situation for Miami than Mike McDaniel, because you hear about Mike McDaniel's process, and obviously he's the one who is touted as kind of the whiz kid genius that there's the genius giveth and taketh away, right? And whether that play calling process needed somebody else to step in, whether that play calling process needed somebody new in Mike McDaniel's ear, it sounds like the review of the season, and I'm not surprised Mike McDaniel said he thought, quote, long and hard about giving up play calling, because Mike is a very non-egocentric coach, and he puts everything under the microscope. So to know that he was willing to process every possible avenue for resolving the issues of the team does not surprise me. It also does not surprise me that the process, at least to this stage, was, yes, you need to have somebody else take the play calling duties from Mike McDaniel, because then you really lose some of the charm of what Mike McDaniel's identity is as an offensive coach and as a head coach. Now, I don't know what alternatives that they have. Some of this was just a matter of want to, right? We talked about that with the running game and how Miami approached structurally running into defenses down the stretch. And it's always kind of been a sore spot for Miami amidst all of their offensive growth under Mike McDaniel. So I do think that Miami, if they keep McDaniel in the play calling duties, is making the right decision. It's more so just a matter of what other change do you need to have the confidence that you need to call maybe the obvious play from time to time, as compared to the one that you don't think the defense is expecting or looking for as you're trying to, quote unquote, feed your best players the football. That is not an easy line to walk. And obviously with the injuries that Miami incurred on their offensive line, you are sympathetic to I got 3 backups out there versus a fade ball with my starting quarterback and the best wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe I want to call that. But then it starts getting to fade balls to, to Cedric Wilson and people who are not Julian Hill, gets into fade balls who are not Tyreek Hill. And that's where you really have a tough sell. So Mike McDaniel willing to disclose that he thought about it long and hard. And the Shanahan tree is not immune from these types of decisions. If my memory serves me correctly, Sean McVay at one point in his tenure with the Los Angeles Rams did indeed give up the play calling duty. And it was when the Rams were in the midst of that trying season after winning the Super Bowl, when everything came crashing down. I believe Jordan Rodriguez did an excellent spotlight on the Shanahan tree called the play callers. And in there, it talked about how McVay, in having lost himself, gave up play calling duties and gave that to Liam Cohen before ultimately taking it back. So I do expect, if we ever get to a stage where this hardship continues for Miami and Mike McDaniel gives up play calling, no matter how good Frank Smith is, no matter how good Darrell Bevell is, my expectation would be you're not going to take long to remember why Mike McDaniel is regarded as Mike McDaniel, and you're willing to take some of the good with the bad. So I'm glad that the decision that they've come to throughout the course of this process is to say, you know what? We really are better off. Let's stay the course with what we have and try to make other adjustments to ensure that our play calling experience gets the right plays in as frequently as possible, even if they are the obvious plays, which seemed like the thing that Miami had the most issue with. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about Odell Beckham. Mike McDaniel commented on that. Mike McDaniel also commented on Christian Wilkins. We're going to cover those here today on this episode of Locked On Dolphins, so stick with us. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on a big upset or you're betting on a 1 seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet college hoops until they cut down the nets. So Mike McDaniel asked about Odell Beckham, said there was a good visit there, and that the Dolphins are have an offer in, and they're going to wait to see what happens from there. Mike McDaniel said, quote, "We did make him an offer. He's had a phenomenal career, and he has had really good football, and he has really good football ahead of him, so he has options." The sticker shock that's going to come with the initial reporting of Odell, I want to reiterate, because I know when we did that show last week, we did, I believe it was Thursday, the pros and cons of Odell Beckham. Talked about, don't take whatever contract he is announced at face value. And the reason why I'm even more emphatic about that now is I know the contract that Odell signed with Baltimore last year and what Baltimore had to do to accommodate it. And while Miami is now, and we'll talk about that with Shaq Barrett here in just a minute, is showing a willingness to do the same kind of thing that Odell and Baltimore did to fit that contract on their books, Odell is going to want as much guaranteed money as possible. And understanding he's playing for 1-year deals, so you want to have the confidence that you're maximizing your value. Whereas Miami, I think you look at the Shaq Barrett contract as an example, and those terms finally came out today. It was a 1-year, $7 million contract with earnings up to $9 million for incentives. And Miami they emptied every possible resource to fit this contract on the books. He got $7 million in cash and is on the books this year for $2.55 million in salary cap hit. So you can do the math. That's about 1/3 of the contract is in the here and now. Odell last year signed a 1-year, $15 million contract. He received $60 million in cash when you factor in what he was able to achieve and earn from a cap perspective. And the Ravens then designated him as opposed to in first cut, despite the fact that he had no additional active years on his contract, for a $4 million dead cap hit this year and an $8.3 million dead cap hit in 2025. So you took a $5 million cap hit, and then you took a $4 million dead cap hit, and then you took an $8 million dead cap hit in 2025 for a 1-year contract. Miami's school of thought here, you have to imagine, is more in line with an even more extreme version of the Barrett contract, which is there's a significant amount, more than 20% of the contract is earned income, right? And I'm sure if Miami had their way, they would probably be closer to 50% of this contract is earned income for Odell Beckham. I think the numbers that I threw out last Thursday don't be surprised if it's like a $4 million base, and then the rest of it is incentives, some of which are easily expected to be achieved incentives. And if that's the case, then you're going to get your money's worth if you have to pay Odell. But you're not going to do what Baltimore did, where you have $12.5 million in dead cap between 2024 and 2025 to fit him on your books in the here and now, which they did in 2023. So you understand why Odell doesn't want to sign that kind of contract. He wants as much guaranteed money as possible. And Miami says, well, you're going to be the wide receiver 3 here. So I do fully expect that there's going to be some cordialness that exists, but this is ultimately going to come down to whether or not Odell wants to play in Miami at a dollar point of guaranteed salary that the Dolphins are comfortable offering. And I would still think, $4 million salary with another $5-6 million in earned incentives that's at his disposal for $10 million for a wide receiver 3, if he blows everything out of the water, would be the structure I would expect the Dolphins to be willing to assemble for Odell. It does not sound like Odell is all by his lonesome here with Miami in pursuit. It sounds like there's a few different destinations that are working through their offers for Odell Beckham, and understandably so too when you consider, look at the free agent wide receiver market and what is currently left. Now, there's a whole other conversation about whether the price point is appropriate or not, considering, Odell Beckham, Tyler Boyd, Michael Thomas, DJ Chark. Those are some of the top names that are available at wide receiver at this point. Odell's the best wide receiver available on the market. Is that better than a day 2 rookie in a good wide receiver class? Particularly considering that you have a pick in 55, which is probably going to be in the sweet spot for landing a player. The challenge for Miami, of course, is that you have only 2 picks on the first 2 days of the draft. So if you had another one, maybe you'd feel better about addressing the offensive line and addressing wide receiver and addressing defensive tackle. But this decision is not just a 2-dimensional decision for caliber of player. And then, am I going to do it right on the graph? No. Caliber of player and cost for pay. It's not that simple. There's a third dimension here, which is opportunity cost. And the domino effect of paying a wide receiver decent free agent money, or paying a wide receiver decent free agent money, how confident are you in the players that are going to be there to add talent in critical spots throughout the rest of the stretch? And I wouldn't just sit here and tell you the draft. But what I would say is that the draft has some spots that have obvious needs for Miami that has good players. Mike was also asked about Christian Wilkins, and I think that that's a very similar quandary that the Dolphins had to fulfill. It was not just, okay, you can fit Christian Wilkins under the tag, because that's factual. They could have fit Christian Wilkins under the tag if they wanted to for a non-negotiable, fully locked in $21 million in change. It was not, do we keep Christian Wilkins on the franchise tag for the cost? Is he worth the money or not? It's, is Christian Wilkins on the franchise tag at a non-negotiable $21 million in cash and cap more valuable to the Dolphins than, let's see, we'll do the whole list. We'll do the free agents. The salary cap hit for Jordan Brooks this year was $3.9 million. Okay, so $3.9 million plus the Shaq Barrett contract that he's on the books for is 2.5. So now let's start to add them up, because you got to get all the way to 21 before you get the number of players that the Dolphins would not have been able to sign instead of franchise tagging Christian Wilkins. Aaron Brewer, 2.5. Okay, so now you're at 2.5. Now you're at 8, almost $9 million. We're not even halfway for Christian Wilkins. And you can't compare it to the contract that he got from the Raiders, because you're talking about franchise tagging him. So there is no funny money to be played with the salary cap or the cash that's owed. Kendall Fuller this year, 2.5. Okay, so now you're at 11.5. So I got Shaq Barrett, Aaron Brewer, Kendall Fuller, Jordan Brooks on the books for half of the money that Christian Wilkins would have committed if he was on the franchise tag. Okay, then you got $2.1 million for Jonnu Smith. Now you're up to 13.5. Should we keep going? Jordan Poyer signed a 1-year, $2 million deal, so now you're up to 15.5. Neville Gallimore signed 1.8, 1 for 1.8. Pretty much the entire Dolphins free agency class would have come at the expense of Christian Wilkins. I just went through Brooks, Poyer, Smith, Fuller, Brewer, Barrett, Saran Neal, Neville Gallimore. I don't even think we're at $21 million yet. So that's why you don't place the tag on Christian Wilkins. It's not, man, the Raiders were willing to pay Christian Wilkins $27 million. You could have got him for 21 and change. That seems like a good value. All things considered, it is. But what it comes at the expense of is adding all of those other players. And that's why it was the right decision for the Dolphins to make. We are going to continue here with the Shaq Barrett contract specifically. Had a ton of you that tagged me on social media, so thank you. I did indeed see the Shaq Barrett contract. We're going to talk about it for just a moment here as we bring this episode of Locked On Dolphins to a close, so stick with us. Usually drinking energy drinks. I got a Gatorade today. That's how you know I'm out of sorts. Shaq Barrett signs a 1-year, $7 million contract with the Dolphins with a $5.5 million signing bonus. Guaranteed at signing is $6.75 million. Here's what the Dolphins did. They gave him a signing bonus of $5.54 million. And they said, we're going to divide that by the maximum number of years that we can prorate that dollar amount, which is 5. So for cap purposes, for cash purposes, he gets $5.5 million signing bonus up front when he put pen to paper. For cap purposes, only 1/5 of that goes on the books, $1.1 million. He's then given a minimum salary this year for your weekly game checks, $1.2 million, for a cap hit of $2.553 million in spite of receiving $7 million in cash, with earnings up to $9 million. But it's a 1-year deal. Well, go back and rewatch Fridays, the ins and outs of void years, what they are, why they work, and why we care. And the Dolphins did a max proration for Shaq Barrett. I could end up liking this contract, and I could also end up not liking this contract. The parallel to Odell Beckham is obvious, but it's half the money of what Odell Beckham signed in Baltimore last year, which was a 1-year, $50 million. He ends up earning $60 million for a 1-year deal, and 1/3 of that was on the books. And then they got the other 2/3 that they had to move on from. So if the Dolphins moved on from Shaq Barrett after 2024, they would incur a 1-year cap hit of $4.4 million in dead cap for the remaining 4/5 of Shaq Barrett's signing bonus if he's not on the team in 2025. Okay. But if the Dolphins extend Shaq Barrett for a 1-year deal, let's say he has a modest year, but the Dolphins want to bring him back, they could re-sign him again, and there'd probably be no need to do the same degree of intensity for funny money with the signing bonus. But say you signed him for a 1 year, $5 million contract in cash. Okay. Instead of 4.4 in dead cap to not play on the team, if you re-signed him next offseason for a 1 year, $5 million contract in cash, just upfront, no fancy business involved, he would be on the books for a $6.108 million cap hit to play. And then the dead year that would accelerate all of his remaining money would come in 2026. And it would be 3/5 of a $5.5 million signing bonus. So it would be 3.324 in dead money in 2026 versus if you don't do anything with him to bring him back, it's 4.432 dead money. I don't expect Shaq Barrett will be signing and playing for the Dolphins until 2028, which is the last year of current voided years on the contract. I do think it's very possible he ends up being back on a 1 year contract next offseason. He's the kind of vet pass rusher for a team that's trying to compete that makes a lot of sense. The only other thing that we don't know with this contract is if there's language written into it that would allow the Dolphins to do what Odell Beckham is contracted with Baltimore, which was Baltimore, before his contract voided, they designated him as a post-June 1st cut. And that's how they get $4 million in dead cap this year and then $8.3 million in dead cap in 2025. If the Dolphins can do that, now you're looking at $2.5 million in cap hit to play this year. You'd be looking at $1.1 million in dead cap in 2025 and then $3.3 million in dead cap in 2026. If they have the ability to do that, I'm relatively okay with how they structured this contract, knowing that is a necessary evil of assembling a competitive roster while you are spending cash. Luke Braun had an awesome illustration, and it was paying equal amounts on the cap year over year and paying that portion of the bill, whether it's dead money or active money, while the cap is going up, leads to a smaller percentage. So as long as you don't exceed your critical mass in percentage, and the Dolphins very clearly have a dollar amount that they're willing to go to, I would say for 2025, 4.4 is one of the bigger ones that the Dolphins have. If they can extend him to play for 2025, I think this becomes a very modest cost, dead money of 3.3 in 2026. But you can't do too many of these. Felt like this was a last-minute pivot from Andrew Van Ginkel, and I'm wondering how much that had to do with, hey, we get a more experienced true pass rusher with a bigger body type, but it's going to cost us more than our budget has us allocated for. Do we increase the emergency break glass? It's kind of what this feels like to me. That's going to do it for me here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. If you don't mind me, I'm going to go lay back down. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I'm Kyle Krabs. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and come back and see us again tomorrow. Fins up.